Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Tasliman kathiran kathira. From Abadu, my dear brothers and sisters, welcome to the part 2 of our lecture series for Juma, which is 2021 Challenges and Solutions. Last week, I spoke to you about the first of those challenges, which was toxic politics, and we looked at the importance of teaching and working with and learning citizenship. Today, I want to talk to you about the second of those crises that we have to face, and that is poverty and income disparity. Think about this. If I asked you to create an economic system in which the combined wealth of 8 people, just 8 people, the combined wealth of 8 men, incidentally, would exceed the combined wealth of 50% of the world's population, that is 3.5 billion people, you would say that it was an impossible task, cannot be done, can never happen. But guess what? You and I are living it right now. And no matter how wealthy you feel or think that you are, believe me, you are not one of those 8 men. Now, in the text of this khutbah, you will get the links and the sources from which I have my information. It's a study that draws from Forbes' annual list of billionaires and Credit Suisse's Global Wealth Data Book. It's been 4 years since the World Economic Forum identified rising economic inequality as a major threat to social stability. But Oxfam said that the problem is not only not improving, it's actually getting worse. The nation, the United States, 644 billionaires have enjoyed a staggering rise in wealth since the pandemic shut down the economy and did whatever it did since March 2020. With this group of 644 billionaires gaining almost 1 trillion in total net worth. So you can see that the pandemic was not bad for everybody. In India, incidentally, the coronavirus pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns made the rich richer, said this Oxfam report. It is called, very appropriately, the inequality virus. They said that the wealth of the countries of India's billionaires increased by an estimated 35%, more than 1/3, during the lockdown, while 84% of households suffered varying degrees of income loss. And 170,000 people lost their jobs every hour in April 2020 alone. Not in the whole month, every hour, 170,000 Indians were losing their jobs in April 2020 alone. The report also says that income increases for India's top 100 billionaires since March 2020, when the lockdown was enforced, was enough to give each of the 138 million poorest people a check for 100,000 rupees each. In the US, the top 1% could give a check of $3,000 to every American and still have more money than they had before the pandemic. But did they do that? Did you get a check for $3,000? Despite world leaders signing up to a global goal to reduce inequality, the gap between the rich and the rest has widened, says the Oxfam report. Far from trickling down, income and wealth are being sucked up at an alarming rate. Incidentally, there's also a very big gender disparity. Of the $1,810 billionaires around the world, 89% are men. 89% are men. Global poverty is one of the very worst problems that the world faces today. The poorest in the world are often hungry, have much less access to education, regularly have no light at night, and suffer from much poorer health. To make progress against poverty is therefore one of the most important global goals. Incidentally, GDP and per capita income are the worst and least accurate measures to measure prosperity of any society. You will find these figures touted and quoted all over the place. They are the worst way to measure prosperity. Poverty is not a factor of GDP but of income distribution and the amount of actual disposable income resulting in discretionary spending. Income disparity is the key factor, not GDP. The inequality between countries is not the only aspect that needs to be considered. Inequalities within countries and societies, regional differences, racial differences, gender differences, and inequalities across other dimensions can also be large and are all beyond any individual's own control. That is why Islam places such a huge value on charity, where it's an article of faith, it's a pillar of Islam. Poverty is not only about not having nice toys, it's about hunger and sickness and lack of access to education and insecurity for the poor and their children. Why should you be concerned? Why must you be concerned with all this? Why am I talking to you? Because people who are poor, undernourished, fearful, and undereducated are more susceptible to manipulation. Educated or not, poor or not, in democracies, they vote. When income disparities are high, the majority tends to be comprised of those who are deprived. Come elections, that can make a huge impact. The stronger societies are those with the least income disparity. We will never have total equality, and that is not even the goal. But disparity must be reduced, with certain critical needs being fulfilled equally for everyone, irrespective of their economic status. Those critical needs are food security, basic education, healthcare, and shelter. Nobody must be homeless or hungry or sick and without access to good education until at least high school level. Contrary to what some people like to believe, that does not take away the entrepreneurial spirit but gives it impetus, because the energy of the person is not being drained in mere survival. It's only when survival is assured that a person can think of development beyond that. The solution to this is entrepreneurship. COVID came as a blessing in this context because it enforced entrepreneurship. People lost their jobs and so had to seek other ways of supporting themselves. Companies downsized and outsourced more functions. Amazon Prime is a prime example of this, where they outsourced their deliveries totally. Entrepreneurship is also the solution because it makes people more self-reliant and confident and contributors instead of merely being consumers. Entrepreneurs create jobs. Entrepreneurship is all about spirit. It's about recognizing that you did not come into this world either randomly or by accident or even by your own choice. Your parents did not choose for you to be born. I believe that we were sent with a purpose. When we discover that purpose, we enter a state of grace. A fish out of water is the most clumsy, awkward creature in the world. It can't move, it flops desperately, it gasps for breath. But the same fish, when you put it back into the lake, disappears like a flash, the epitome of grace, speed, and beauty. When we are in our appointed task, we are like a fish in the water. The world conspires to help us to succeed. But first, we must recognize our purpose and then we need to consciously accept it. That is the scary part. But that is the threshold that must be crossed to demonstrate that we are in and not out. Without crossing the threshold of owning responsibility for our own lives, we cannot expect anything to happen. As somebody said, everyone has two birthdays, the day he was born and the day he discovers why. Sadly, some of us don't have the second birthday ever. Choices are not always easy. As a matter of fact, all the important ones are difficult. The most difficult thing is to choose between two apparently good alternatives. But the choice must be made. Everything else depends on that. We sometimes mistake success for ease and complain about difficulty. We forget that difficulties come to test us so that the prize can be given once we surmount the difficulty. Success goes to those who can overcome difficulties. Every difficulty resets the bar and creates a new definition of excellence, without which we would have been lulled into a false sense of security which hides fatal flaws. Only winners get medals. Remember that. Those who fail are relegated to the garbage pile of the detritus of history. A vibrant middle class is essential to survival in any economy. The bigger the middle class, the bigger the market for goods and services, and more money flows into the economy and is available for public services like healthcare, education, transportation, and so on. Contrary to the myth of trickle down, money doesn't flow down from the super rich or from global multinational corporations into local economies. The super rich do not use local services. They mostly live in ivory tower isolation and are generally unaffected by local conditions as they are surrounded by cordons of insulation. Multinational corporations are answerable to their shareholders who do not even live in Soweto, so to speak. They don't live where you and I live. They don't live in the slums. They don't live in the poorer districts. They don't live in city centers. And so they don't care what happens in local economies. Many don't even employ local people except in menial jobs because locals may not have the education and skills that they need. In the world of entrepreneurships and startups, which I inhabit and have some claim to, we say that you cannot succeed in your startup until you make a significant personal commitment. Most successful entrepreneurs deliberately have no plan B because of two core beliefs: their unshakable belief that they will succeed and their belief that a second option blunts the edge. It takes the edge off desperation, off hunger, and it is detrimental to the result. So they like to remain hungry, remain desperate, and they succeed where everybody else thought they would have failed. They use others' derision and naysaying to spur them on to do even more, and they prove their detractors wrong. Excellence is measured in many ways, one of the most important of which is your confidence and ability to stay on your chosen path. You will find when you do that other people will often fear your high ideals and goals. To remain on the path and not be discouraged by their lack of confidence is a measure of excellence. I have always measured the strength of my goals from the number of people who they scare the daylights out of. To me, it means that I am on the right path. You see, the only path that doesn't scare sheep is the path to the pen. I personally have never had a liking to being penned, especially since every sheep pen has only two doors, one towards the pasture and the other towards the abattoir. Danger is both exciting as well as mostly imaginary. But when we embark on lofty goals, which are rooted in integrity and truthfulness and the desire to do something worthwhile in the world, what we know of it as well as what is unseen conspires to make us succeed. Angels walk with you though you cannot see them. Doors open for you where you would not have imagined. People come out of the woodwork to help you, not because you asked them to, you didn't even know that they were there, but because they were sent. The resources that you need to accomplish your goal will flow in your direction. Very simple principle of physics. Water flows down a slope, not up it. So when you are climbing a hill and rain falls, water will flow in your direction. If you are running away and going downhill, water will flow away from you. Your position on the hill doesn't matter. No matter how far from the peak you are, it is your direction which makes a world of difference and quite simply spells the difference between reaching the peak or not. If you want to succeed, you must face your fear and stare into its eyes until it looks away. Not turn your back on it, especially because what is behind your back becomes even more scary. Let's see what Islam says about entrepreneurship and business. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَا تُؤْتُوا السُّفَهَاءَ أَمْوَالَكُمُ الَّتِي جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ قِيَامًا وَارْزُقْهُمْ فِيهَا وَاكْسُوهُمْ وَقُولُوا لَهُمْ قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah An-Nisa, and do not give to foolish people your property, which Allah has made a means of support for you, but feed and clothe them with it and speak to them words of kindness and justice. Allah said, just don't give up. And this is a huge lesson in terms of succession planning in family businesses. People will give the whole business to their son, usually boys, who is unfit and has no training and has no capability of managing that something of that magnitude. Now, the Quran is saying specifically, do not do that. Feed them, clothe them, train them, be good to them, be nice to them, talk nicely to them, but do not hand over resources until they are capable of dealing with them and handling them responsibly. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, la ta'kulu amwalakum bainakum bil ba'tili illa an takuna tijaratan an taradim minkum. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِكُمْ رَحِيمًا. And Allah said, O you believe, do not eat up your property among yourselves unjustly, except that it be a trade among you by mutual consent. Don't deceive. Don't grab properties. By all means, do decent, honest business. And do not kill yourself or do not kill one another. Surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most merciful to you. Rasulullah said, an honest, truthful and trusty businessman or businesswoman is together with the Anbiya, the Siddiqeen and the Shuhada. And this is in Tirmidhi. An honest business person will be with the prophets, with the Siddiqoon, the truthful people, and with the Shuhada, the martyrs. Then he said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, every ummah has a fitna, which is a means of testing. The fitna of my ummah is wealth. And that's also in Tirmidhi. Narrated Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if the son of Adam alayhi salam, if Adam's son had a valley full of gold, he would like to have two valleys. For nothing fills his mouth except turab, dust. And Allah forgives him who repents to him. And this is in Bukhari. And then hadith in Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi and An-Nasai, unnecessary words and vows are uttered in trade. Shaitan and sins intervene. Purify your trade with sadaqah. People, when they are selling, they exaggerate the goods. When they are buying, people try to talk down and needlessly criticize. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited both of these behaviors. And then Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, merchants will be fasiqs, they will be sinners on the day of judgment, except those who acted honestly. So it's not being truthful and honest in trade is among the greatest of good deeds. And this is in Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah. Now, what must we, Muslim individuals and organizations, what must we do? Three things. One, make vocational skill education compulsory in all schools. Let every child learn a trade, something to do with the hands. This will instill the work ethic and teach a multitude of essential skills and attitudes which all of us need. Number two, teach entrepreneurship in all schools through practical opportunities. Help them to experience entrepreneurship and learn how to build teams, take responsibility, communicate, customer service, budgeting, financial planning, social responsibility, and leadership. Number three, set up a venture capital rolling fund to encourage startups. Teach them how to make a business plan, how to pitch for funding, how to deal with failure and recover, how to make high-powered business presentations to VCs, and so on and so forth. Muslims must become job creators, not people standing with their hat in their hand in a line looking for a job. The world of today and tomorrow is the world of the entrepreneur. It is they who will create the new power structures that are needed to challenge the toxic hegemony of predatory capitalism. Entrepreneurship will change the world. They must be Muslims. That is critical. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Jalla Jalaluhu to be pleased with you and never to be displeased. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to do that which is pleasing to Him. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with us and to help us in ways and protect us from all evil. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyil kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.